All right. Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. How you doing, brother? Good to see you, Frankie.
Good to see you, John. How have you been, man?
Been so good, man. We just had a wonderful mock draft this past week. Man, I'm telling you what, I'm getting dialed in. Maybe it's because I do a fantasy football podcast, but I feel pretty goddamn dialed in here, man.
Man, we got a slate coming up. What is it? Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and for the first time, I'm just going to say in history, because I've never heard of anybody do this, on game day itself, we are doing a fantasy football draft. I love it, man. I love it.
We're psychos. We're doing a draft. Literally, we will be wrapping up minutes before kickoff on Thursday night.
Does that get you excited? Oh my God.
How bad do you want to draft Lions and Chiefs players knowing that you can watch them minutes after your draft?
I'm not drafting anybody else. I'm just going to draft every single Lions and Chiefs player. You got it. Jared Goff, done. Amon-Ra St. Brown, sure. Travis Kelce, first round, goddamn right. That's where I'm going.
Hey, man. That strategy could work out. There are a lot of fantasy players. There is a cornucopia of fantasy players on Thursday Night Football. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We got a great show today. Today is our champions episode. Frankie and I each have 3 champions, guys that we are planting our flags on and saying, these are our guys this year. Let's go, baby. Yeah. Great episode. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you for following us on social media. We've just really good stuff out there. There's news that comes out. There's funny memes. It's a really great follow. Thank you for following us. It's Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Frankly Fantasy Football, and on X and Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. All right, man. Hey, let's get into some news here.
The season of your listeners don't expect.
News and notes. All right, Frankie, we've got a little bit of a few answers so far of a couple of the people we've been monitoring here. Josh Jacobs. Everybody's freaking out a week before everyone drafts, the weekend before everyone drafts. Josh Jacobs signs a 1-year deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. Let me throw that over to you, Frankie. Why don't you put on your GM cap here and just give me the laydown of the Josh Jacobs deal and how you feel about him now.
Yeah, from a fantasy perspective, love him. If you can get him if you're in a 12-man, a 14-man, even a 16-man league towards the back half of the first into that second round, I really do like it. The reason being, John, is because if I'm putting on my GM hat here, you signed your bell cow for 1 year, right, for a $12 million deal. So what am I going to do? I'm going to run him into the ground. He's going to be a part of every play possible, knowing that there's Jimmy Garoppolo throwing the ball. You're going to rely on the running attack. You lost Darren Waller. You still have that of Devontae Adams. You still have Hunter Renfrow, right, and a few others. But John, this is going to be Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs' show from an offensive side of things. So for me, I think that last year, we mentioned it in earlier episodes, that was his ceiling. I really believe last year was his true ceiling. So for me, even if he does a slight less in terms of productivity than what he was last year, but he's still in that top 7 running back, I love him, and I will happily take him in that second round.
Yeah, I agree. If he's fallen to you in the second, even the middle of the second, I've seen end of second, if he's still there, scoop his ass up. Yeah, he's on the team. He's got a 1-year deal. He's posted on social media. He's back. He seems happy.
We're number 8.
This was a financial thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a financial thing. And he's back. He's healthy. Seems like he's in pretty good shape. You know, that was the one worry I had, is that he's hanging out in Vegas and he's not working out. He's not doing it. He looks like he's in good shape. So I think everything's going to be fine with Josh Jacobs. Draft him with 100% total confidence in my mind. All right, Trey Lance. We had a weird trade here, Frank. Trey Lance, who was, relegated to the number 3 quarterback in San Francisco, traded for a pack of cigarettes and a shiv to the Cowboys, basically. 4th round pick. Break this down, man.
This is John. This is going to go down as the worst trade in NFL history. There's no doubt about it. You're not trading
The trade to trade up, you're saying, for Trey Lance at the draft.
Good call. Correct. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
What I meant was the San Francisco 49ers to trade up for 3 first-round picks to get a guy that literally, John, I saw something, okay, that was they paid him over $20 million to play 262 plays. Think about what I just said there. 20 plus million to play 262 plays. That's outrageous. And honestly, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, shout out to you, Trey Lance. I mean, you just had a bank robbery like we've never seen. And, you know, the San Francisco 49ers, like, dude, if you wouldn't have, John, you mentioned it, if you wouldn't have drafted Brock Purdy in the last pick of that round, you would be shit canned. So it's pretty interesting, man. It's very, very interesting. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys, this could end up really causing a little bit of turmoil. Dak wasn't super happy, and it was interesting to see that interview today. So it was pretty interesting, man.
Well, I think there's another guy who's not real happy about it. It's Cooper Rush, the backup quarterback for the Cowboys. So I did a little math here, Frank, just off the top of my head, because, you know, I'm a mathematical genius. I'm like a beautiful mind. I see it, you know, all encoded.
Absolutely.
Trey Lance was paid $76,335 per play.
Wow. It's just okay. It's just okay.
Wow, man. I mean,
crazy.
Listen, as a Browns fan, I've seen a lot of failed number 1 draft picks, you know, in drafts, but wow, that one's rough, dude.
Trent Richardson trade has to be up there for the Browns fans, you know, trading up to get him. This is 3 times worse.
It is
3 times worse.
My God. Yeah, that's crazy. 0 fantasy relevance for Trey Lance.
0.
I'm sorry. Yeah. A couple of things with some injuries here, guys, to take a look at. Jerry Jeudy. This is really unfortunate, man. Those of you who listen and watch, I've been huge on Jerry Jeudy. I think he's poised for a true breakout. I think it's the 3rd season for him as well. I mean, this is a guy that I just was super, super high on. And unfortunately, he's off my board now. He's going to be out a few weeks for sure with a hamstring. Going into camp, going into week 1 with a hamstring injury for a receiver, I don't draft those guys. I don't like soft tissue issues. 80% of the time, they just don't work out because they're going to start slow. They're going to come in before they're ready. They're going to re-injure. There's a high likelihood of re-injuring that, especially with a hamstring. I hate it, unfortunately. I was really high on him. And I also looked at Russell Wilson as a post-hype sleeper this year. Yeah. And I think it's going to affect him. They lost Tim Patrick for the season. You got Jerry Jeudy, who's going to be out for a couple of weeks. It's going to hurt Russell Wilson, man. I mean, it just is. He's not going to be able to play to the level without his number 1 guy out there. Jerry Jeudy's a true number 1 receiver. Now, what I will say, we talked about Courtland Sutton being a sleeper.
We did.
During our mock draft. He's shooting way up my board now. I mean, we were grabbing him as our last pick in the mock drafts. Go after Courtland Sutton, guys. I mean, this news is not going to catch up, I don't think, in time for your drafts, most likely. Get Courtland Sutton. Get him at a huge discount. He's going to absolutely return way more than his draft capital right now.
Definitely.
Yeah. Terry McLaurin, uncertain. We talked about him having a little turf toe issue. He is uncertain for week 1. I don't think it's likely, but they're trying to get him out there. Monitor Terry McLaurin for this. Again, I don't like these kind of issues right before the season. JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigma, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, rookie wide receiver. The surgery on his wrist, everything went great. They don't really have a timetable, but they're thinking probably 3 to 4 weeks right now. So not great for JSN, although he is a rookie receiver. I don't think this was a guy you were looking at drafting to throw out there in week 1 in your flex. Hopefully not. You don't need to do that. I still think he's worth, I don't love the price to grab a guy who can't play for 3-4 weeks potentially. But I do think there's still a lot of value with him. This is a guy who was probably not going to emerge really until about midseason anyway. So I'm okay if I can get him at the right price to put him on my bench and stash him. But you are going to be stashing him for a little while. He's going to be out for a few weeks. All right, Cooper Kupp. This is great news because I was really upset to see that he had an injury coming into camp. He's on track to play week 1. Everything's looking good with Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
That is huge. And I was nervous with him already with the Rams, the way just how putrid they were last year. I think that was a one-off. I think it was a freak season. They had a million injuries. As long as Matthew Stafford's healthy, I think that Cooper Kupp's going to be an absolute stud. So I feel really good about that news. All right, Frank, let's get into our champions right now. Let's go, baby. Like I said, Frankie and I each picked 3 champions. These are guys that we are putting our money where our mouth is. We will be drafting these guys. We will be reaching for these guys. These are guys that we love this year. And we mixed it up. We didn't take obvious choices here. I like to take a stud guy like, oh, really? You think he's going to be good? Of course, he's a second-round pick. Yeah, but I like to plant my flag on one of those guys. I've also got a guy that's a little deeper that we talked about in our sleeper episode. And then I've got a guy in a onesie position, which I normally don't do, but I like that. Yeah, I like that. All right, Frankie, why don't you get to your first champion? Who is it going to be, man?
John, my first champion is none other than Sunshine himself from the Sunshine State of Florida, baby. He comes reigning from that of Clemson Tigers with his beautiful, luscious locks. His ADP is number 54, and he's quarterback number 8 in ECR. I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence. Guys, and those listening and watching, the reason why I'm planting my flag and taking him, locking arms into war, is because last year, Trevor Lawrence was the 6th highest in fantasy points for quarterbacks. And in addition, his jump from his rookie year to his sophomore year, he had 16 more touchdown passes. He had 9 fewer interceptions, which, by the way, that's 53% less interceptions compared to his rookie year. And it was his first year with Doug Peterson. In addition, he had 66.3% completion percentage, which is incredible. Also, he posted 3 games over which he had over 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns in the same game. He also had 7 games with a 10 plus yard carry, which to me means that this dude truly has the opportunity to be a light end dual threat quarterback. Now, John, the biggest piece of the puzzle here is Calvin Ridley coming on board, right? So he now raises Trevor Lawrence's floor, in my personal opinion, while also raising his potential ceiling. So for me, John, I absolutely think that Trevor Lawrence could crack and be a top 5 quarterback, but you're able to draft him at an ADP that you don't have to pay for that. So for me, John, I'm locking him in. And Trevor Lawrence, will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
Will you be my champion? I love that. All right, Frank, I like that. That's not bad. Yeah, you've been talking up Trevor Lawrence here all off season, so that makes total sense. I get it. All right, my next, my champion. Let's go. This one I am super excited about. You know, at the end of the season when you're doing DraftKings and they send you like the summary of how your whole football season went with daily fantasy and all that stuff. My number 1 drafted player in daily fantasy last year was my friend and champion, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver for the New York Jets. Jets, baby. Listen, man, you look back at last year and he was a rookie out of the Ohio State University. So it definitely holds a soft spot in our hearts here. But last year, he was a wide receiver 19. He was 83 for 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. This year, his ECR is wide receiver 10. His ADP is 23. So he's going in that second round. In the beginning of the season, as drafting was going on in mock drafts, I was like, damn, I love Garrett Wilson, but he's going too high for me. He's a little expensive. I got to draft him at his ceiling. Is he really going to do that? The more I've looked into it and the more, maybe call it the Hard Knocks bump. I don't know. I don't know, maybe fucking pairing up with a Hall of Fame quarterback who looks great, by the way. Yeah, man, the more I look at Garrett Wilson, the more I see a guy who could be in the conversation with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson next year. I really, really do. I thought we were drafting him at his ceiling at wide receiver 10, but I'm sorry, his ceiling is wide receiver 1. I really, really do believe that. I am going after Garrett Wilson. I'm extremely excited to get him on a team, but he's dialed in, man. If you've been watching any of the preseason at all, which I have, I've been hyper focused on this Jets team because it's fascinating. It's a great offseason story. Man, I'm telling you, Rodgers is dialed into this guy. I thought it was in the beginning. He was literally just looking straight at him and throwing to him the entire time. I'm like, oh, they want to start building chemistry. That's what it is. No, man, that's after the first series when they had those plays. He came back out and just kept dialed into him, zeroing into Garrett Wilson. Beautiful catch. I mean, Garrett Wilson, that touchdown he had in the preseason, the previous quarterbacks that he played with, Joe Flacco, little fucking Mormon kid, who was the other guy? Mike White. These guys, give me a fucking break. He's got Aaron Rodgers now. That touchdown that Rodgers threw him, threading the needle, he had to catch it up here, away from the receiver, or away from the corner. Those other quarterbacks, they couldn't even deliver that ball to him. He had 4 touchdowns last year. He's going to have double-digit touchdown this year, man. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. Garrett Wilson, will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
All right, Frank, who's your second champion of the day?
John, I'm going to be staying in the steam and in the heat of Florida. I want to be the guy. My next champion is going to be paired right next alongside Sunshine. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean that literally. I'm taking nobody less than Calvin Ridley, Jameson Ridley. That is his middle name. I think so. The reason why, John, I'm taking him is because the strength of schedule immediately versus defenses versus receivers, Jacksonville and Calvin Ridley is actually ranked first being the best. And so I like when I hear the best. On top of that, his ADP is 36. He's receiver 16 right now in ECR. I love where that's at. I think the ADP to a lot of people is a little rich for their blood. For me, it's not at all. I think that there's a lot of value there. And here's the reason why, is because last we saw Calvin Ridley in 2021, he was 7th in target share and 5th in route win rate. In addition, without Calvin Ridley on the Jaguars, they were already a top 10 offense. They had Kirk and Zay Jones combining for an average of 21.6 fantasy points a game in half PPR already. And in addition to this, Calvin Ridley's upside, we've already seen it. It's not unproven. It's not something that's, a figment of our imagination. We're grasping for straws. We have truly seen him dominate. He already has top 5 receiver upside with a high floor, assuming right mentally he can still stay strong with some of the battles that he's had previously, and also he can stop betting on a few games, right? Let's just call a spade a spade. So with that being said, John, I am truly riding high with this tandem of Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley. So Calvin Ridley, I have one question. I'm going to look you dead in the eyes, baby. Will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
Goddamn right you will.
Look at you with the stack and the champions, man.
Attack.
Wow, stack attack for the champions. That's a bold move, Cotton. We'll see how it plays out. All right, my second champion here. Listen, this guy, every time I'm doing a mock draft, he's there, and I don't get it. I've been asking these questions all off season and all preseason. It's Khalil Herbert, the running back for the Chicago Bears. All right, Khalil Herbert. Let's see. All right, last year, how did he do? Khalil Herbert. Let's see. He finished as the running back 39. All right, not bad. He was a running back 3 basically for your team. That's not bad. 129 carries, 731 yards, 4 touchdowns. Okay, not bad. You know what? He was a backup running back. That makes absolute total sense. He came in for a few games when David Montgomery went down, played very well. Ended up splitting carries the rest of the time with David Montgomery. Sure, I would expect that to be a running back 3, definitely. Well, now he's the starting running back for the Chicago Bears. Oh my God, the guy's got to be a running back 2 at least, right? He's got to be, possibly in top 15 running back, something like that. He's got to be, right? This is a run-first offense. He's the starting running back. Makes sense to me. Last year, he was the running back 39. This year, his ECR, expert consensus ranking, is the running back 36. I don't fucking get it, man. I don't get it. How do you go from being the backup and you end up at wide receiver 39 as the backup nearly the entire season? You're going to be the full-time starter this year, and you go up a couple of spots in ranking. This makes absolutely no sense. He is not a running back 3 for your team. This is a solid ass running back 2. Couple knocks on him. He's not going to catch a lot of passes. It doesn't, even though we did see a dump off pass for a 50-yard touchdown in the preseason, it's really not, number one, it's not Justin Fields' specialty, and it's really not his specialty, and that's okay. He's going to be running the ball. He's going to be guy running the ball between the tackles. He's going to be the guy around the goal line. The only, competition he's looking at is Roschon Johnson, who's a rookie, and he's been banged up in camp, and Cordero Patterson, who, honestly, they could trade. There's definitely a possibility before the season starts they could trade him. But Cordero Patterson, I think he's washed. He's just lost a step. He can't compete with these younger guys right now. But Khalil Herbert, absolutely, no doubt in my mind, this guy is going to be a beast this year.
Sorry, John.
Oh, Deontay Foreman.
Is on Atlanta.
Atlanta, my bad. Deontay Foreman, yeah. Deontay Foreman will cut in. He's a good running back, but he's not a guy who's going to carry a load. I don't see him being that threatening to Khalil Herbert. Last year, he averaged 5.67 yards a carry. Didn't have a ton of volume, obviously, so that number will go down, but that's excellent. That's a major, major metric for a running back. Schedule looks pretty good, too. The first 3 games to start, you've got Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Kansas City. I'm not afraid of any of those rush defenses, so I think he's got an opportunity there. He ends with Cleveland, Arizona, and Atlanta. Arizona and Atlanta for your semis and your Super Bowl. It's a pretty nice finish there for a running back in cold weather. So, yeah, Khalil Herbert, will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
I love that. Is there anything better than the Tyrion Lannister just going?
It makes me want to watch Game of Thrones from start to finish again.
It does. I know. Have you gone back and watched season 1 recently?
I need to.
It'll blow your mind. Everybody's so young. The kids are young. You're just like, wow, so much has happened in this course of the series. And you see them again and you're like, whoa, this is crazy. You're going to die and you're going to die and you're going to die.
Don't go to that wedding in a red room, okay? Just
do not go to the wedding. Rob, do not go to the wedding. All right, Frankie, who is your final champion here, brother?
This one was tough. This one, you know what, Browns fans, please cover your ears and cover your eyes. And I say that, I almost wish I had like a little violin playing, because sometimes you just love somebody and they're on the other team that you hate, but you secretly are wearing their jersey when you're sleeping, right? And that's kind of what I feel like with Jorge Pickens. George Pickens, baby. This dude, I am all about. When he was at Georgia, I love this cat. He came in and balled out even when he was hurt. And he got the opportunity right before he got drafted. He still came in and was a dog. I think that he is absolutely being slept on at this point in time. His ADP in half PPR is 79. They have him as receiver 31. Last year alone, he finished fourth among rookies in receptions with 52 and fifth in receiving yards with an 801. And here's what's interesting. He also had a 66% catch rate with Pickett throwing him the ball. And so when we look at how everything transpired last year, it was really fascinating because he still played 1/3 of his time with Mitch the Bitch, with Mitchell Trubisky, right? And when he played 5.5 games, so 5.5 games with Mitchell, he only had 10 receptions for 196 yards. But when Kenny P came in, he ended up having only in 11.5 games, he had 42 catches, 605 yards, and 4 touchdowns. All right. He ended up being the receiver 39. And this cat, man, has his ceiling is absolutely a top 20 receiver. Could even, dare I say, crack top 15. Like his athletic ability certainly puts him there. Now, the biggest question mark is, can Pickett continue to keep playing at the high level that he has been in preseason? And when he was throwing Pickens the ball, can he continue that chemistry? For me, I'm buying into it. Unless they're playing the Browns, then fuck off. But I'm buying into it. Pickens could absolutely be a gold mine of a receiver 3 with insane upside. Again, I'm not saying that you have to draft him as your receiver 1. I'm not saying you're drafting him as your receiver 2. I'm saying you draft him where he falls as a receiver 3 or a 4 and reap the upside. That is why I love George Pickens. You don't have to reach. You can get him for good value and watch this dude ball. So one question, George Pickens, Jorge Pickens, will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
All right, let's keep it on George Pickens here for a second. Let's talk about him a minute here. First of all, do you have a George Pickens nightie that you wear at night?
Maybe not. But
okay, all right.
No. The answer is no.
Yeah, I think you need one. Hey, tell your wife that's a great Christmas gift for you, man. George Pickens nightie. I mean, come on. Hey, listen, man, this guy, I mean, I don't know if you've seen a pattern here, but we tend to like receivers in their second year.
Yes.
That is a real thing. Years ago, it used to be, it took 3 years. It was their third season where they would break out. That's changed. The speed of the game and the age of the game is changed. I mean, it is now year 2 as a wide receiver is the breakout season. George Pickens is the perfect breakout candidate. You're not drafting him until very late in the draft. It's a great price. He has a really good connection with a quarterback that he was drafted to play with, Yeah. And that connection seems real. But yeah, he's the perfect candidate for this. A big play guy, just absolutely dynamic. Obviously, he's got a nose for the end zone. I mean, there's going to be a lot of red zone opportunities for George Pickens this year. And he's proved that he can do that. So, yeah, man, I mean, it's really kind of a second-year Odell Beckham Jr. type kind of season is really what it could be in the cards for him. I think the only thing that makes people nervous is Kenny Pickett.
Yep.
I don't think a lot of people have seen him play very much. I don't think a lot of people, I mean, honestly, it wasn't great last year. But again, it's him coming in with another full camp, with another full season, running with the ones. I think you can see Pickett getting a lot more comfortable, and Pickens he's gonna fucking benefit from all that, man. No question.
John, I think the other thing too is Allen Robinson coming on board. I think a lot of people think that that's going to eat into Pickens. I actually don't. I actually see Allen Robinson helping alleviate a lot of the looks that defenses are going to try to spy on that of Pickens. I'm not saying Allen Robinson's this god by any means. I'm not even saying he's that great of a receiver anymore, but he still demands some sort of respect by the nature of his size and stature. And then you also have that of Deontay Johnson. And Deontay Johnson is technically they're number one at this point in time. That's why I love Pickens, because of the value, and he has pieces around him to where people aren't necessarily going to be able to double and slide coverage his way constantly because of, you know, the other elements they have on this team, let alone Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and Firemouth, right? Pat Freiermuth. So I that's why I think this is creating a perfect storm for that of George Pickens this year.
I like that a lot. You're right. I mean, he's not he's not just a flash of, you know, greatness on a shitty team. There's a lot of good pieces around him. They cannot focus on him. I mean, he's going to get single coverage a lot.
Yeah.
Man. So yeah. Great call, buddy. Love the George Pickens pick. All right, for my final champion, I don't think this is a big secret to anybody, okay? I've been talking this guy up every goddamn week. I'm talking about Darren Waller. God, we talked about him in new faces and new places. We've talked about him in mock drafts where I try to take him and Holly sniped him from me the last time. Listen, man, I have a very clear strategy when it comes to tight ends. I am willing to take Kelsey in the first in the right situation. I am willing and able always to take Mark Andrews in the third round. If I have a third round pick and he's available, he's my automatic pick. But my next person I'm targeting is Darren Waller. He's going fifth, sixth round. I think it's absolute gold. He's now on the New York Giants. He's got Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones throwing him the ball. But listen, man, Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. Don't sleep on him this year. He's had just absolute terrible talent around him at receiver. They haven't been able to get a healthy receiver room there. They had some issues with the offensive line last year. I think they've fixed a lot of those issues, but what they didn't really fix is they don't have a stud number one receiver who is commanding targets. That guy is Darren Waller. Darren Waller is the number one target on this team. He's very much looking at it. Think about it as a Kelsey, as a Mark Andrews. There's not very many tight ends out there who are the number one target on their team. It worked out very well for the Chiefs. It's worked out very well for Baltimore as well. But Darren Waller is that guy. Let me see here. He's the tight end 5. You're telling me he's behind George Kittle and TJ Hawkinson? I skip those guys and I go after Waller in the 5th all day long. The value is just too good. He only played 8 games last year, and that's the big slight on Darren Waller, is that it's hard for him to stay on the field. Mm-hmm. You know, it is a risky pick because, you know, he's been a friend to injury throughout the past couple of years. But you know, he played in 8 games last year. In 7 of 8 of those games, he had over 5 targets. He scored in 3 of those. He's an absolute PPR monster. Get Darren Waller on your team. Okay. One thing I even like to do is to take Darren Waller and you can play him in your flex. You can play Kelsey. You could play Waller. You could play Mark Andrews. You could play those guys in your flex and then grab like a David Njoku or somebody at the end of the draft. So if you're weak at receiver, you can use Darren Waller that you took in that 5th round as kind of a buffer for that and start the tight end in your flex. I'm not afraid to do that. In a PPR, Darren Waller is going to score more than most receivers. Absolutely. So Darren Waller for the New York Football Giants. Will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
John, I'm with you, man, on Darren Waller here. Like, I think one of the coolest stories that I heard that I actually validated with what you said was they needed to take him out of practice one time because of this year, because Danny Dimes would not look at any other direction. He kept targeting Darren Waller. So for me, man, I love that. My question to you is, do you think that, like, truly putting this in perspective, knowing how the draft would have to unfold. Let's say first round, you're back half the draft. You go Kelsey. Let's say you wrap back around, right? You keep going through. Do you honestly think in the 5th round that you would still draft Darren Waller? Do you think that you would, not you, the general person that is an active fantasy football owner, do you think that they would be able to put together a decent team knowing that you're not going to be able to get an RB2 really at that point in time, or a receiver 2 at that point in time? You're going to be stacking with 2 dynamic tight ends. Do you foresee that unfolding well?
That would be tough. Yeah, that would be really tough. No, I've seen it in the past. To be honest with you, I've seen that happen. Dennis, our cousin.
Yeah, but he went back to backsies. He went back to backsies. You have 4 rounds in between. That's because I'm curious, actually, and it would be interesting. Maybe we should test that on a mock draft.
I think we should test that on a mock draft. Maybe look at that this week. Yeah. I think it's doable. And I think this is a good year to try that, because I think there is a lot of good running back talent late in the draft. I think there's a lot of RB2s that are sitting there that are being drafted as RB3s and 4s. So that's why, and I love the 0 RB strategy because of that. So because of this year, because there are guys like Waller and Andrews and Kelsey, I mean, absolute difference makers at the position, I think you could do that. I mean, it'd scare the shit out of me the entire draft. I'd be nervous as hell, man. But I think that is a possibility. Sure. I think you could do that.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. All right. All right, man. There's our champions here, buddy. I mean, listen, this is your thing. You've got Calvin Ridley. Every year you go balls deep on a guy who's always got question mark. You always pick the guys with the most question marks. Last time you did Michael Thomas. And you know what? Your reasoning and your argument was fantastic. But yeah, it was a little bit of risk. So let's hope this year with Calvin Ridley, because I'm rooting for him too, man. I'm with you with Calvin Ridley. His talent is insane. He's with an emerging team with an insanely talented quarterback who's probably going to be taking that next step this year. Yeah, I love it, man. Does it make you nervous though?
It doesn't, man, because you know, I'm all in. I burnt the boats. And I really mean that. Like, I've watched this dude's training camp as many days in a row as I possibly been able to. I've watched the preseason games. I've watched, like, literally Doug Peterson talk about him, Trevor Lawrence. I've been so dialed in, and it's almost like a borderline obsession with this guy. And I think it's truly just to prove other people wrong, as weird as that sounds. Like, I burnt the boats, like, partly because of that, but also, like, I feel truly that passionate. You know what this reminds me of, John? It reminds me of Austin Eckler. I was the Austin Eckler proponent for the last 3 years in a row before Austin Eckler became Austin Eckler. And I drafted him every single year, 1 overall, 2 overall. I've done it. I put my money where my mouth is. This guy, I feel the same conviction around. He's a little bit more risk, no doubt about it, because he hasn't really played since 2021. But I'm all about risk, baby. Bring it on.
We didn't get all dressed up for nothing.
Right.
What of your 3 champions? Who would you put as your 1A? Who's your top, like, your champion of champions? Who is your champion of champions?
It's going to be Sunshine. Remember the Titans all fucking day. You know what I mean? Like, type of guy. But this dude, I mean, the honest to God, when watching him at Clemson, he never lost a game in high school, goes to Clemson, only loses in the playoff or the national championship, goes and has an absolute god-awful year with Urban. And the fact that didn't kill this kid's confidence, and then to come back with a not first time head coach, but a first time in Jacksonville head coach there with Doug Peterson, and then them not really having a true number 1 receiver. They had Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, which, by the way, were both new additions to the team. In watching him perform, John, it was fun. He was fun to watch. And here's the key. His division is shit. Like, when you think about the Colts, when you think about the Texans, right? When you think about the Titans, those are the teams that are in his division. Those are the teams he's playing twice a year. And so when I'm looking at that and I know, okay, Texans, check mark, Titans, check mark, Colts, they're going to be a decent defense, I mean, to a certain degree, but I don't think they can, outmatch that of the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. So for me, when I'm looking at those games and thinking about the division and thinking about the weapons that he has in his second year in the system under Doug Peterson, man, for me, I mentioned it with George Pickens, but I believe that it's creating a perfect storm for that of Trevor Lawrence to go into that Justin Herbert category of eliteness.
Yeah. I'm with you on it, man, 100%. My champion of champions is Garrett Wilson. I just think he's going to be so fun. Oh, my God. He's going to be so much fun this year, man. That's great.
He's going to be a blast.
All right. Yes, it's going to be an absolute blast. I hope he's my top DraftKings player this year as well. Although the reason why he was last year is because he was so cheap. I mean, he's not going to be that cheap this year. He's going to be tough to get in DraftKings, actually. Yeah. That's our champions episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and watching. Please don't forget, yes, this is a video on YouTube you're watching right now at Frankly Fantasy Football. Thank you for subscribing. Please subscribe to the video on YouTube. Hit the notifications bell. It'll tell you every time there's a new episode coming up for us. We do audio and video. The audio can be found anywhere podcasts are found. Thank you so much for subscribing, everyone. This off season, we've really grown the podcast. We've had something, it's not big, but it's huge for us. Anytime you get an episode with a couple thousand views in a few days, I mean, we just thank you so much for subscribing and for listening. We really, really appreciate it. You could follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Frankly Fantasy Football, and on X, Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. I love you guys. Frankie, I love you, baby. Are you ready?
Ready. I'm so ready, man.
Couple more episodes coming up before the real deal, baby. You can do your cramming, guys. We're going to have one more mock draft this season, and we're going to do a little preview before the season starts. Just to do a little start-sit preview and who we like. So tune in. Thank you so much for joining us. We love you all. Frankie, any last words?
None here, Johnny. Just know that when you guys go into war, you choose your champions, and we would love to hear them. If you guys have guys that you are dead set on and that you are putting your flag in the ground on, send them our way. We'll give you a shout out, and we'll tell you if you're full of shit or if we really agree.
That's right. Tell us who your champions are. You know what, Frankie? You're my fucking champion, baby.
Got me right.
May the fantasy gods smile upon you.